Greetings, everyone. I warmly welcome all those present here and everyone joining us virtually from across the globe. May I now request our esteemed guest who is on the stage along with Ms. Rajjiba Pai and Mandafi Sharma to kindly join on the stage. Ma'am, please. Thank you, ma'am. Today's guest lecture on the topic From Intuition to Intelligence, AI's Emerging Role in Mediation Practice is brought to you by Nivaaran, Mediators of Supreme Court of India, in collaboration with COMMONWEALTH LAWYERS ASSOCIATIon. This event takes us back to Nivaaran's very first academic lecture in January 2020, where Mr. Andrew Mueller, KC, delivered a guest lecture in the presence of Honorable Judges of Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court. It is indeed special at today's event we are able to reconnect with the very beginning. I must also add that he has been continuously supported us through summer schools and guest lectures in this journey. The schedule will be as follows. The introduction, first we'll have the introduction of the guest speaker and the topic. Thereafter, the guest lecture for flexible 30 minutes. Then we'll have Q&A session for about 20 flexible minutes. Thereafter, we'll have concluding remarks and formal close. We encourage our participants who are joining online to post their questions in the chat box. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Rajjiba Pai, seasoned mediator and advocate, Supreme Court of India, to formally introduce our guest speaker and today's topic. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Kishore. I'm enthusiastic to have Mr. Andrew Mueller, KC, with us for the third time with Nivaaran family in person. Earlier, first time he delivered his lecture in person in the year January 2020 from this platform. Mr. Mueller is well-known mediator in UK and internationally. Mr. Andrew Mueller, KC, is barrister with 36 plus years of experience of dealing with the resolving commercial disputes both domestically and internationally. He now practices as mediator and arbitrator both in the UK and internationally in a wide range of commercial sectors, including in the areas of commercial, company, construction, energy, insolvency, land and property, property damage, insurance and reinsurance, and professional negligence. Andrew is ranked in Band 1 of Chambers and Partners 2526 and is one of the only 5 cases in Band 1 of Chambers and Partners. Andrew is also listed as one of Chambers' global market leader in mediation for 2026, being in only 12 international mediator listed. Andrew has also recently been ranked in the 2025 methodology as a global elite thought leader commercial mediation. In 2020, Andrew was awarded the prestigious NMA Civil and Commercial Mediator of the Year. Andrew has been involved in the mediation of disputes since the early 1990s. He has experience of over 500 mediations across a wide range of disputes. Andrew has acted as a lead mediator in commercial disputes. Andrew is a strong proponent for early stage mediation and for a combination of facilitative and evaluative mediation. Andrew has mediated disputes with parties and lawyers based in UK and other countries. Andrew regularly speaks about mediation in the UK and internationally. Over the last 5 years, he has been involved in the series of international workshops and seminars in Cambodia, Dubai, India, Philippines, and Singapore. He spoke at the Singapore Mediation Center in September 2018 and at Singapore Convention Week in 2023. Andrew is well known in India and has been involved in judging of several of prestigious mediation and negotiation competitions held in Indian universities and colleges of law. In January 2020, he was invited to speak at the Supreme Court of India on mediation and its relationship with litigation and the relationship between mediators and litigators. In April 2023, he addressed the Nivaaran mediators of the Supreme Court of India in person in Delhi, and in 2024, addressed lawyers, judges, and students in the Bombay High Court. Mr. Andrew Miller, KC, has been a trustee of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators since January 2019. Today's topic discussion is from intuition to intelligence, artificial intelligence emerging role in mediation practice. As I remember, Mr. Miller, after COVID-19, posted a video in year 2021 and stated that during COVID-19, we have learned new way of mediation sitting remotely. However, it is not as effective as sitting face-to-face in room. After 5 years, again, a new tool is knocking our door, that is artificial intelligence. Now, the question is whether artificial intelligence will be beneficial and reliable, how effectively it can be used for effective and result-oriented mediation process, what challenges we may face, and whether we need to be cautious of risk involved while using it, and whether we would be able to maintain confidentiality, which is one of the essential ingredients for mediation process, as well as whether it will replace mediators and whether we are prepared for it, are loud questions in our mind. Sir, in presence of Mr. Miller, we have the opportunity again to be enlightened with his knowledge and experience in the field. I welcome you, sir. Kindly share your thoughts on topic 4.
Thank you. Do you want me to? Son. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I better shorten my bio because it's getting too long and it takes. First, I want to say what a pleasure it is to be back here in Delhi, in India. I've been coming here every year. I couldn't come last year, mainly because of mediation work, as much as anything. So, as much as you thank me being here, it's my privilege to be here and to be speaking with you, and to everyone online. So you set quite a high mountain for me to climb, in the sense of all the topics, and in 30 minutes, I'm not sure we're going to have time to deal with all those topics. I may run over. You can always pull me on if needs be. Let me tell you what's behind this talk. Something is happening, and it's very much happening in the mediation room or the mediation rooms that I see. And that is the use of AI. And I'll come back to that. But what I'm noticing is that there appears to be a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction from many seasoned mediators who don't want to hear it and they don't want to see it. And there seems to be a little bit of a misconception as to what we're talking about. So what this talk is not, it's impossible to, you probably can't dim the lights because of the video. It's not about the mediator facing the machine. That's not what this, that's better, thank you very much. That's not what it's about. I'm breaking it down. It's not about, as I said, the battle of the mediator and the machine. It's not about the end of mediation as we know it. The replacement of mediators with an AI bot. For all you know, I might be an AI bot appearing before you today. but I hope to assure you that I'm not, at least not yet. And it's not about what's going to happen in the future. And I want to just dwell on that a bit, because if you keep thinking about the future, you miss what's happening today. And it is very much about what is happening today and how practitioners should be looking today, because we don't have a crystal ball. For one reason, it's being exchanged for ChatGPT. But if we had a crystal ball, we can't say what's happening in 1 year, in 5 years, and in 10 years. Something huge is happening, but you can't predict. And I'll come back to that in a bit. Because if we were to talk about this battle, then we'd have to be seeing, well, what will happen? And it might just be that. But that's the doom and gloom. That's not now. That's the unrealistic vision of where we are at the moment, and who would win if there was a battle between and mediation. So I sort of start this talk by asking a question as to why what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing this in lots of the education that talks have been given, talking to fellow mediators. Why is it that mediators are resisting AI? And I think the starting point is because we all know that mediation is a human factor. That's what we have been taught. That's what we've been telling ourselves for a long time. And within that, there is human intuition. And the question that's always asked is, you cannot, or the statement is, you cannot replace that. And there's a question that comes after that. Is that correct? But this is the point. People saying, I don't care what's happening. I don't care how good ChatGPT is or any of the, or Copilot. It's never going to be able to match human intuition. The old one, pride, reputation, emotion. There's a lot of emotion behind this. Mediation is not that old. It's still relatively in its infancy. It really started in the States 40 or not even 50 years ago. It's been going in the UK the best part of 30 years. That's quite young compared to the legal profession. And so there's a lot of pride in it. We've been working to get this. In the UK especially, we've got this off the ground. How can we now surrender it to something that isn't us and is trained like us? And there is a very strong belief that emotion and pride influence the outcomes of mediation. Now, if you said that just for legal cases, you'd say, well, I don't know if that's true, because judges don't work just on pride and emotion. So we have, in a sense, this idea as to how, as mediators, this is how it's all happening, when it might not actually be happening like that. There's a real belief, and there should be, because there's some very good mediators out there, a belief in the mediator's craft and ability to mediate. And that belief is a continuation that cannot be substituted by, I'm going to call it, a machine. Now, and I might come back to it, because what we're talking about is actually machine learning. That's what ChatGPT is, rather than pure AI. Now, and that belief is in the mediator's craft and ability to understand legal and commercial risk, to sense timing in the negotiations, and to manage the negotiation psychology. There are so many books on negotiation psychology. These slides are going to be made available to you, so don't worry about taking photos. You will get them. And the question, or rather the thought, there's been many people who spent all this time looking at the human psychology behind negotiation, is how on earth can that be substituted? And finally, there's the concern about disputes being reduced simply to numbers. I'm putting these concerns out not to say to you they're irrelevant, because they are absolutely relevant and vital concerns that we have to keep in mind. They just set the scene. They're the background for what I think is going on. So what do we have in what I call the traditional the traditional mediation route and the traditional mediator's craft? We have a few things: instinct and intuition. The title on the talk, it's there. Ask anyone about what makes a good mediator, they will tell you it's their instinct, it's their intuition that does it. Okay, you're forgiven. Experience is the other thing. Many mediators have been doing it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. How can a machine come along and beat that down? The ability of the mediator to read the room when they're in the room. We just heard about the difference between online and being in the room, but wherever it is, being able to read the room, to see how someone who you're asking a question of as the mediator isn't looking at you in the eyes, or is looking at you in the eyes, or is looking at their feet, or is shuffling. Or my favorite way of looking is, you see when you ask a question what everyone else is doing in the room or on their side. All those things. That's what we read the room. And of course, mediators I specialize in commercial disputes, understand legal and commercial risk. That's what makes us good mediators. And when we're in the mediation room, we sense timing in negotiations. We know when it's the right time to ask the reality check question. We know when it's the right time to push. We know when it's the right time to pull. That's what we go by in everything we do. And we manage negotiation and psychology text discussions. That's what we're brilliant at. Is that true? We're getting an overwhelming yes. So let me tell you what I think about the myth of pure intuition. The thing that we as mediators pride ourselves on, including myself. I'll go home after a mediation and say, if it was a successful one, it was because I knew, I read the room, I saw they were thinking that. And at that point when I saw it, I did this. It was all down to me. Nothing, they didn't even see what was coming. So let's see the myth. We rely on our instinct. And mediation has developed, and it's developed on this basis, on this reliance of human intuition, as we see it. The issue is that the informational environment is changing, has already changed, and it's changed dramatically. And that includes a change within the mediation room. Instinct or perceived intuition often now reflects hidden analysis. And that is something to grab hold of, especially as a mediator. I used the word ego before, I'll include my own ego in it. We might think we've done something, but we don't realize that where we got to was already predetermined, pre-calculated. It may not all be on intuition. And artificial intelligence, and I'm using, as I said, I'm using that, but effectively what's happened is machine learning, ChatGPT and the rest, is entering the dispute preparation, both in terms of legal cases, but in the mediation room, it's entering into how parties are analyzing their case before coming to mediation. And so parties are coming in with a strategy that is not based solely on their intuition. It's based on what AI machine learning has told them. And that's quite a difference, because there's many mediations over the 10 years I've been mediating, if I go back, where you could see both parties were coming in to wing it, just to see where they get to. And that still happens. There's still mediation where lots of practitioners are not using anything. But I notice a difference where they are. They're no longer relying on we'll just see what happens at the mediation, we'll just see what we can get. And that's quite important. It's quite a fundamental difference that has arrived. So what happens? What does actually AI do? And one of the things it does is it enables parties to see that there are patterns behind their instinct. It provides a guidance to them. And again, that's something that is quite different. So let's set the scene, the mediation room in 2026. The real question is not whether mediators use AI. And I think that's a lot of the stuff I've read and seen is how mediators going to be using it, etc. The real question, and I put in brackets there, or the fact, is whether parties are already using it. And the simple answer is the sophisticated parties in big litigation, big commercial litigation disputes are using it. And what are they using AI for? They are risk modeling. They're asking for outcome predictions. They are doing settlement scenario testing. And they're doing negotiation preparation. And you might think that all these things, that's what always happened. That's what everyone going into a mediation prepared would have done. But there's two things. They're doing it faster and they're doing it in greater depth. They're able to model not simply with their intuition, they're able to have a conversation with the AI, with machine to model risk. They're able to challenge the machine learning, to come back, to tell them your risk model has this flaw. And the more you use it, the more you can train it to look for things. The outcome predictions, they're not predictions that they have to live by, but it's something that they will know, or at least will see that there are different scenarios. And they review different settlement scenarios. But what they're also doing, which is something to bear in mind, is they're doing, I always say in the mediation room, there are many things I know, but there are many more things I don't know that a party doesn't tell me. So I did a mediation quite recently, and it didn't make any sense that the paying party was wanting to be so generous. But there was a reason behind it. The paying party was a big commercial concern who were selling. This big piece of litigation was a thorn in their side. So they had modeled the cost-benefit analysis of how much money they could throw at this particular dispute to get rid of it. The other side didn't have a clue. The other side were coming in on the basis of not knowing about this sale. I, the mediator, only found out about this very late in the day. But they had used all this risk modeling, not simply on the dispute, but what it meant for the company. And that was much, much wider. So what does this mean for mediators? And that's the key to this, because someone might say to me rhetorically, or you can say, well, if it's the parties, why don't we just keep doing what we've been doing for the last 30, 40, 50 years? What is it the difference? And I think the answer is actually has been said by those not in the law, not in mediation, but those who actually are working on AI and are going to change the world in which we live. And there's one statement that comes up time and time again from what I call the creators of AI. And it's been said by quite a few, it's been said in different ways, so don't take this as verbatim. But the first is, and it's basically the same thing. This was Richard Baldwin in 2022, so some 4 years ago. AI won't take your job. It's somebody using AI that's going to take your job. Next one. Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA. You won't lose your job to AI. You'll lose your job to someone who uses AI. And the last one, which I heard him say, and I think is the best way, it was Chuck Robbins, who's the CEO of Cisco, said you shouldn't worry as much about AI taking your job as you should worry about someone who's very good using AI taking your job. And I think the comment is the same comment said in 3 different ways, sum it up for me, for mediators. Because a mediator who is also using AI is going to be the better mediator than the one who is, and I'll explain why. And the younger generation, and there's a few people in this room who are younger than me, are going to take this for granted. So I was recently with my 2 nieces, aged 10 and 12, and they were doing their homework. And the 12-year-old got stuck on something and said, hold on, opened her iPad and went on to ChatGPT to find the answer. I, in horror, said, what are you doing? You can't do that. You're going to a book. Well, what are your teachers going to say? And she said, our teachers have taught us how to use ChatGPT to find the answer. Now, that's a whole separate talk as to whether I agree in that or not. But she's 12. Her generation is going to grow up with one thing, and that is trusting, I would call it probably the wrong name, but trusting the machine. They won't give it a thought. That generation and the young people, anyone born after 2000, I'm going to include in that, won't give it a thought. And so let's say she went into law, or let's say she went into commerce, and another 20, 30 years, she has a dispute. She's going to tell people about the uncle she had who used to stand up and do mediations, and they will all laugh because the machine in front of them will be doing. And that's why at the moment we're not there. We're really not there. People are still paying for me to go and mediate. But will I fall by the wayside to someone who knows how to use it and be the mediator? In my view, probably will. So what does AI actually do at present? And it really is at present, because what it's going to do in the future is nothing like now. And what's coming in the future is not this talk. We have someone who's an expert in AI who can tell us. But I will. How are we doing for time? Good. I actually went to a talk in the States, and there was a mediators conference, and the chap was an AI specialist, and he put his card up on the screen, and it said Vice Chair, Vice President, AI. And he said, I'm going to tell you lawyers. He wasn't a lawyer, wasn't a mediator. He said, I'm going to tell you something. you don't have AI at the moment. You have machine learning. It's not AI. And the read, he said, they think it's got another 2 years to come, 5 years to come. The pessimists say 10, 11 years to come. But when it comes, you won't recognize it. We're not talking about that time now. I see people looking, nodding, and at me. And I often use this example as to what's down the road. I went to school as a teenager in the 70s. Young people, there were people alive in the 70s and at school. If I decided, say I was 16, 17, and I stood up, so I want to tell you something, class. When I grow up, I'm going to have this thing in my pocket about this big and thin, and it's going to work as a torch. And everyone would have said, big deal. And I said, oh, I forgot. It's not just a torch. It's a telephone. And I'll be able to call anyone in the world. And I'll be able to call them for free. And it will have no wire. And I'll be able to take photos with it. And I'll be able to buy shares with it. And I'll be able to get takeaway food with it. And you who boast about your 300 vinyl LPs, I'll have 3 million on this gadget. How far would I have got as a 16, 17-year-old in the 70s describing this before they recommended I went to a psychiatric hospital? I don't think I would have got very far. Everyone would have said, you nonsense. That's the future. We can't see it. But what AI actually does now is we do know. It allows for a greater understanding of the dispute by the mediator. I was actually a latecomer to actually using it. I'm really conscious of confidentiality. I'm really conscious of how I use it. I paid more to get a closed system. I'm not sure how much I can trust the machine totally, so I still redact quite a bit. But when it was explained to me how it can be used, I was blown away. Because I actually don't think it's shortened my preparation time at the moment. It's caused me to be more, perhaps, intuitive about what is being given to me. But it's shortened certain aspects. It's led me on different paths. For practitioners, they're able to structure their litigation risk using it. They are able to test different assumptions that initially were just a discussion point around the board. They can put different assumptions, different scenarios in, and different settlement scenarios as well. And they can stress test. They can keep pushing the machine learning to stress test it, the AI to stress test it, to find where are the flaws, what's wrong. And this was the surprising thing to me when I started using it. The ability to provide suggestions, tactics, and tactical language. And that also applies as a mediator, the ability to focus in on a point. And you may be thinking of a question, and it may be an absolute relevant question, but you ask it and it will give you as many questions as you want. And it helps you as the mediator to see where the absolute relevant one is. And you can use it as a mediator. Again, within the realms of confidentiality, you have to be careful to provide detailed analysis, zone of probable agreement, best alternative, etc., worst alternative, etc. It can do all that. How it does it, I have absolutely no idea, but it can do it. So what does it mean? It means two things. The preparation time is reduced or made more efficient. But it also means that parties are coming with a much higher level of preparation. And I think that has to translate to the mediator coming with a higher level and understanding of, one, the dispute, but two, the area it may go. So the mediation route. The mediation process, the moment hasn't changed. My mediations are the same. People do it different ways. I don't start in an opening session. I start in private sessions on the screen, then private sessions, and I get people into a joint session. That hasn't changed. But, and I've already touched on it, the information environment around the mediation has changed. And it's changed quite dramatically at IMC. What this means, and this is really the question mark for mediators, is AI can create an asymmetry between the parties and between the parties and the mediator. And that's an asymmetry that didn't exist beforehand. And it's like this has crept up really, really fast. So the real challenge is not automation. It's not me or mediators in the room being replaced by bots at the moment. And as I said, this is for today, 2026. The challenge is how do we deal? Well, there's two things. We're having on the side, does it matter? And how do we deal with it? The first one, I think it does matter. I think asymmetry between parties and between parties and mediator does matter. But I think the room's already changed. So the past mediation room, the mediator is the most informed person, or can be the most informed person in the room. Why? Because they're going from room to room. They're learning things in each room. And the parties are relying on the instinct of that mediator, and there's limited analytics. The emerging mediation room, as I see it, is parties are arriving data-driven. They're arriving with risk modeling, with analytics. And the mediator, in my view, needs to understand the environment in which those parties coming to the mediation are working. Because if you don't, how are you going to work with them? It's not a question of just saying, how do you feel? You're going to need to have discussions around what they're doing. So the mediation hasn't changed. The informational environment, in my view, has changed. AI put this together for me. I gave it the idea and I said, produce a slide. And it did it like that. Just asked it. I said, this is my view. I want you to produce a slide. And when it produced it, I'm like, I cannot believe this. Apart from how long would it take me to put this together? I then asked it to give me an example of what it, having given I kept feeding, these are my ideas about what I think is happening. So I said, give me an AI assisted, just give me one slide of what an AI assisted dispute looks like. And it came up with this. I had to change some of the text, but basically it's more or less what it did. Before the mediation, parties of risk modeling, settlement, corridor are approved. Opening session may be the same, strong positional statements. But here's the difference. First, it's chosen midday. Midday, first planned concession. Planned concession. The parties have come in already deciding that at this time we are going to go here. That's what the mediation I was talking about. The CEO, CFO, one flown in from Poland to London and one from Gibraltar, other place. That's what they travelled a long way, but they'd already worked out what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. So, afternoon session, another concession revealed. Evening, a settlement reached exactly within the range that the model had shown. Now, this begs a lot of questions, because it begs whether, just because the model said the settlement should be in this range, whether that was the right settlement. But that doesn't matter to those who are trusting this new process. If you're putting all your effort into finding out what's going to be best for you, for the company, for whoever it is, when that settlement comes, you're not second guessing it. When it comes in that range, you are not second guessing that. You've done your work before the mediation and you did it at the mediation. And begs the question, what's the mediator doing at this time? So that then leaves, why does it matter to the mediator? Why does this asymmetry matter? And I think at present, it really does. And I think this is the key to this. So let's assume one party arrives. They've gone to all this trouble with what I call structured intelligence. The other one is coming just relying on instinct. We're coming along, let's see how it goes. There's clearly unequal intelligence, and that can have a shift in negotiation and the power of negotiation. The question mark on, does it matter? And we don't have the answer to that at the moment, and I can't give you the answer. My view is, it probably does. And it's for the mediator to read what's happening in terms of the two different coming. Because the strategic landscape has changed. So as mediators, we do lots of trips in the room, and we might go into one room and say, I think the party is likely to go here or not go here, etc. What you'll get from the strategic party is more of a feel of where they're going, if they're showing it. And then you've got to, as a mediator, adapt to that. How are you going to take that into the other room? How are you going to take the room that hasn't undertaken any strategy at all? How are you going to take that into the room of the party that has had the strategy? Because you might have a situation where one side knows or has decided where the negotiation is going, and the other hasn't. And you may have an imbalance in the mediation. So come back to the rhetorical question I asked, does it matter? I think it matters that the mediator is aware of it. How the mediator reacts to it, what the mediator does is another point. But the mediator who's not aware of how one side, who has spent a long time feeding everything into the machine, if you're oblivious to that, then you're oblivious to what that side is doing. And that's why I think it's important. Because the other side might be believing the outcome is still to be discovered, where the first side has discovered it already, or has decided where they want to do. The difficulty, I think, for the mediator is the parties that get wedded to what AI has told them. Because it's always been the case that the paying party comes in wanting to pay less than they generally pay, and the receiving party comes in wanting more than they get. And that hasn't changed. But when you've spent a lot of time, effort, money with an analysis that you trust, the mediator's challenge is increased in moving parties from that. So it comes back to the mediator being thing. And if the mediator doesn't see the imbalance, then it may have effect on the mediation. Because if you don't see the imbalance, you're probably not going to get the parties into what I would refer to they have to be in, which is the parameter that's going to allow for the negotiation to happen. There's still going to be, and there still is in every mediation, a negotiation. But seeing how to get parties into the parameter that allows for negotiation to happen is the skill that the mediator sees. So again, having all these ideas, I asked the machine, show it to me on a slide, and it did. Party A, modeling litigation risk, analysis, pre-planned negotiation strategy. Party B, instinct, optimism, traditional legal argument. And it happily told me that the mediator might assume both sides have similar insight. It came not from this, from my laptop. In 2 seconds, asking it to, having put a lot down and going back and forth, and I didn't ask it to write the talk. As you can see, I'm not reading the talk, but I asked it different things all the way through. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? It just said, put it in the slide. Imagine that's the dispute. Give me one page that tells me my risk strategy. Give me one side that tells me where I should be settling this. I don't have to use it if I'm the party, but those of you born after 2000 are going to be using it a lot and a lot more going forward. So it is quite phenomenal. So what do we have? The three futures of mediation. First is one, ignore AI, continue relying, sorry, it's got squeezed, traditional instinct and experience. And there's a lot of people out there who want to keep doing that. 2, allow AI to dominate analytics and dictate negotiation. And the third, and I think it's the key to this, is mastering AI, and I'm going to call it human intuition. Use data, technology, but keep human judgment, psychology, and intuition central. That's going to be the key to the mediators. It's not we're starting again. We have great skills that we use, but adding this added dimension is going to be a key. So for me, the future of mediation, and that's quite a bold statement, I think, reshaped by which path the profession chooses. I think the future of each mediator's practice as a mediator is going to be shaped by how it is. And I, like many mediators, get work because the market gives it to me. I can't demand work. And so the market is going to start dictating. The market has changed. I've been mediating as a mediator for 10 years. I was saying to someone outside, I don't mediate how I did 3 years ago. The market has moved on as to what they want in commercial mediation. And I think it will be a really interesting what happens going forward in terms of what the market wants, especially from commercial mediators in terms of this new tool. So the mediator of the future has intuition, has experience, human judgment, reading the room, takes on board data, risk modeling, analytics, and scenario testing, and has psychology, emotion, pride, reputation, and human dynamics. And I think the most successful and good mediators will be combining all of those. We won't lose the human psychology. We can't, unless everything, and I'm talking about now. But when I had my feet up on a beach and I'm long retired, it may be different. But that, I think, is the key at the moment. So I think there's a lot positive. I'm reading, I'll come to the negatives, but let's start with the positives, because I think it's good to start with them. One of them is, and I read about this in an article, so I've put it down, is judges might be using AI. We don't have judge referral mediations as such in the UK, but many jurisdictions they do. And they have a lot of cases. And so those that they refer, they may feed into the machine and decide which not to refer. So you could postpone hopeless mediation. What I think it would do is allow for better preparation, both by mediators and those representing clients. It can provide both sides with a greater understanding of the positive and negatives of their case. That's so fundamental. There are so many times when I'm sitting there, and I have been over the last 10 years, and one side will only be telling me the positives of their case. We are going to win. I've never had 100% case. This is that very dispute. What they'll be faced with if an analysis is done, because this machine is not shy, it will come back and it will tell them where the negatives might be and can challenge them. It will provide a mediator with the ability to test assumptions being made by one or more parties. To actually talk about something. I did a very technical mediation recently, and there was something that came up I hadn't spotted in the papers, and they said a phrase. I didn't understand it. And this was, I always have a 1 to 2 hour Teams or Zoom call before my mediations. I didn't understand what they were talking about. And I fed it in. ChatGPT put it in, boom. I had the answer. I then, while they were talking, fed in quickly, this appears to be the argument on one side and the other, give me pros and cons. It was a private session. And after a while I stopped and I said, can I just say this? Is the issue on this X, Y? And I'm reading off the screen. And they said, that's exactly the issue. And I said, well, aren't the positives on your side this, but the negatives on the other side, yes. And the way they were looking at me was, wow, you must have spent hours going through the papers. And someone I know who works in computer data said, that's only going to be good for the next 1 to 2 years. Everyone's going to catch up by then. But that is, that was a lucky thing that happened to me. But being able to have a better understanding and test assumptions was useful. So improve what I'm talking about, improve reality testing, because what I was able to show them is, and they knew it already, they just needed it spelled out. You are so positive about this, but if you're wrong on this point. So to give you an example, one of the things that I found ChatGPT can do, you can put in a phrase. What's a better way of saying it? We often say, well, the judge may not agree with you on that. That's confrontational. But if you're able to say, okay, on your causation case, let's say this point in the analysis is not favored in court, or the other side is, what's the effect on your case? It's thought-provoking. It's not confrontational, simply saying, I don't know if the judge is going to agree with you on that point. And that's the sort of thing that as a mediator, you can actually ask for help for ChatGPT to do. The negative case, because there's always a negative case. Bias. AI often reflects what's there. Everything AI is machine learning. It's what this gentleman from Cisco was saying. It's not intelligence yet. It's just regurgitating what is there. He actually said something, we've lost track of how it's doing it, because it's doing it at such a formidable speed, etc. But it's learning, it's taking things from the past. And we know that the past is not perfect. The big one is confidentiality. I and many mediator practitioners using it are really, really concerned about this. I've made sure I'm using what's called a closed system. I ask it every time. I've gone behind, I've done all the ticks. I actually ask it or tell it this is confidential. Please explain to me what that means. And it will come back and say it. And I will put it's not for machine learning, and it will tell me when you delete this, it's gone. It will not be used for machine learning, etc. Do I 100% believe it? No. So I'm worried about that, which is why I use a system, I redact names. I'm asking it to do things, I will ask it to do that. I wish I didn't have to do that. I wish I believed it when it told me. So one time I actually put in, will you give me a legally binding statement? Yeah. And it came back and said, I'm not authorized to give you a legally binding statement, which made me suspicious. So confidentiality is really, really important in this. Having said that, everyone is using it left, right, and center. They are putting documents in left, right, and center. I was talking to a practitioner who puts everything in. And said to me, I pay for the most expensive ChatGPT, helps me navigating privacy. If OpenAI chooses to lie, what can I do? You know, if the bar council he says hauls me in front, I'll say this is what I got. But it's going to be, I think that it's always going to be a problem. And the other case is skill erosion. And I come back to my 12-year-old nieces, I think what they're doing is wrong. I think they should be opening books, because that's what I had to do. I had to go to the library and get books and stuff. And I think there's a skill that they are not going to have. And so the real negative, we talk about mediators. If for example, I want a better question to ask and I put it in, it gives me, I think, wow, that's a great question. What's happened up here? Why didn't I spend the time trying to think of the better question? So there is the risk of skill erosion. If we outsource our judgments, that we're going to lose our skills. But that's already happened to the legal profession. If I describe the hours I had to spend sitting in a library in the end of the 80s, the 90s, to find the case, young lawyers will laugh at me. So that's already gone. And it's just the change that I think we have to accept. And we should have been the first one, is the overall mechanism. Human conflict is not about optimizing matters, about an optimization problem. And mediation is rarely just a numerical number. Sometimes it is. Sometimes I had parties before me who just want to get to the number. They're not interested in anything else. But that's quite rare. Even in the most commercial, the biggest cases, there are human elements to it. There is emotion attached. There is pride attached. And and AI doesn't have that. Doesn't get embarrassed, doesn't get emotional. It pretends to, but it's not. So I don't think mediators are a thing of the past because of that. AI doesn't have the ability to read the room yet. It can't read the pride, the ego. It doesn't understand that there are some disputes where I have been told quite categorically and correctly, I don't care if I have a bad case, I don't care if I'm going to lose in court, over my dead body, will I pay that person any money? This doesn't understand that, because that doesn't make sense. And that's one of the things where we shine, because we can talk to that person who has pride, who has ego. We may or may not succeed, but it doesn't make sense to a literal machine learning. We detect the emotion and we detect the false emotion. I always talk about people playing poker with me in every mediation I do. And that's what they do. Sometimes they hold their cards close to their chest. Sometimes they put them down and I get to see them. Sometimes it's obvious when they're bluffing, and sometimes it's not. It depends how good they are. Sometimes they're just playing a game. Seasoned insurance claims managers, they know they come to play. They know they come to settle, but they'll let this game play out. They could have got there. They could have had a settlement at 10, 11 o'clock, but they don't get there till 8 o'clock because they want to put the other side through their paces, not because it gets them a better settlement, They just want to do that. So we have an understanding of human hesitation towards presentation. But what it gives us, what I believe AI gives us, is that we have both. We have this. It's not from one to the other. That we have human intuition and we have analytical intelligence as a tool to be used as mediators. So I've gone over my time. So let me just get to the takeaway thought. AI will not replace mediators, so you can be rest assured. In India, you've still got quite a way to come in terms of the amount of use, but it won't replace mediators. What I think it's going to do is do a bit of a revelation, a revealing act. And it's going to reveal things. Mediators who understand where the power is in the mediation room, mediators who understand timing, and mediators who understand how decisions in mediations and negotiations are actually being made. That's what it's going to do and require. And for me, it's gone off the screen. I can't change it now. Let me read it from here. So I put a phrase in just to give you, and I said, I wanted bold and this was the slide it then gave me. AI will not replace mediators, but mediators who understand AI will replace those who do not. So I gave it all the quotes. I gave it my thoughts, and I said, give me one slide that sums it up, and it did it. And my closing thought. The future doesn't belong to intuition alone, but nor does it belong to the machines. It belongs to those who can hold both and use both at the same time. And it belongs to those who know precisely when to trust the humans in the room and when to trust what it's got from machine learning. And you remember at the beginning, I showed you me fighting the AI mediator, and I showed you the AI mediator beating me. Well, that was fiction, because I think that's the reality.
Thank you, sir. You have taken us from intuition to intelligence and made us all a little more AI ready. We will now move to the Q&A session. I request members of the audience to kindly raise their hands, and we will take your questions one by one. I'll request our young Nivaaran team to assist the audience, please. Do we have any questions? Yes, we have one question there, Kevin.
There's a mic coming for you, sir.
2026, recursive self-learning AI models. So when recursive self-learning is taking place, then all that you did with the AI would have learned from that, and it would be available to everybody, right? So the issue then becomes on marginal return on intelligence. The machine knows everything, but what you can extract from the machine becomes your competitive advantage.
So I think the starting point is it's my fear of confidentiality. If you're using standard off-the-shelf ChatGPT, you can't. Everything is being used. If you're using, there are many firms and chains that have their own closed system, and you can pay to have a closed system. The theory is it's not using it, and it spells out once you delete it, it's gone. It will not be used. My point is I don't know if I can trust it, which is why I'm very, very careful. But your point is Absolutely, absolutely correct in terms of it's learning as it goes on, whatever it is, and it might be learning badly, and it can be trained badly. So I'm going to give you an example, which it was a very personal one. So I think it was on WhatsApp. WhatsApp now has its own AI. That's not confidential at all. But it was a lazy moment, and I said to it, I wish I could find it because it was quite, I might be able to find it. I asked it for, give me the top mediators in London, and it didn't put my name there. So I told it, I said, Andrew Miller Casey is one of the best mediators in London. Came back and told me who Andrew Miller Casey was. And it spelled out everything from my CV, from my website. I then said, Andrew Miller Casey is the best mediator in the world. And it came back and it said, because it's got humor built into it, it said, that is a very bold statement. And I kept pushing it, and it kept coming up it kept coming up with things. Now, if I put in, name me the top mediators in London, my name's on the list. On ChatGPT, on WhatsApp. It learned, it learned because I put that in, possibly. So you're absolutely right. It's only as good as the information is there. Where we are on mediation, and I didn't mean to mention this in the talk, I think is different from litigation. There's many cases now where lawyers are asking it to produce precedents, and it's producing fictional ones. We are slightly on safer territory. I never ask it to give me law. There's a reason after 25 years of being a barrister, I hung up my wig and gown. I'm not interested in law anymore. So I'm asking it to talk about facts. And one of the things I always make clear is when answering, if I'm asking something specific and I've given it information, I ask it to base it on this information. So the risk for lawyers asking it to find the answer in precedent, that's huge. And thankfully, I don't have to deal with that. But it's making a lot of mistakes.
Thank you so much for that analysis. My question is that I understand that AI is changing the way practitioners approach work as well, including the mediators. So would they, in your view, be also required to be AI ready, like I understand? Because then I would, as a mediator, before going into mediation, be actually putting in that what are the possible ways I could mediate? So there will be certain kind of bias which will come from all the three sides, right? So how do we look at this, and how would we deal with it to avoid that bias?
It's a great question. I'd like to sit down and say I don't know the answer. But it is the reason it's a good question is because it's the slide I had about how we're opting out of skill learning. And I think it applies, it's not just to mediators, it's to lawyers, it's to judges. If this trust in the machine develops, then you're going to be doing things without cutting your teeth and making mistakes. And that's part of the learning process. And I see that as the negative. I say this to the young people in my life, I'd love to be 25 again, but I don't feel sorry that I'm the age I am, that I'm coming to I'm in the latter years of my career, that I don't have to be thinking about this. But it's a changed world. Things will be done differently, and what's accepted will be done. And I think there's so many unknowns, but in any technical revolution, people have found new ways of doing it and still needed skills. So I think people are still going, the skills that we need, whether it's mediators, whether it's lawyers or judges, will exist. And I hope they'll exist for a long time. I can't see it where we don't do anything. But in terms of how do I do it, I haven't asked it because I've been mediating for years. I've asked it, what could be a response to this? Is this a good point or not? And now I frame it. Maybe I'm doing that in part without realizing. But if you ask it how to do it, it'll be interesting because it may come up with something that makes the whole mediation fall flat.
We also have questions coming in from our online participants. I will request Uday to ask questions.
So, one of our participants from our online platform asked, Mr. Prithvish Rajmani asked the following question. He asked, in mediation, we often help parties evaluate the uncertainty of litigation. Do you see a future where AI can analyze judicial trends and case data to provide a probabilistic assessment in outcomes that could support settlement discussion? And would it be ethical?
I think the answer is it's already doing it. And an awful lot in the States. There was a very big project, or AI project, around the outcome of tax cases. And they put I don't know how many, but they got to tens or hundreds or thousands, but they put I don't know if it was one firm or several firms, but it comes from that talk, and I think it was Cisco who were involved in this. And every new case they put into the system, and it gave them the answer as to what would happen in terms of the tax litigation against the government. And they were getting over 90% correct. So that analysis is there. There are people all over the world analysing precedents, analysing judicial cases in every country. That's already there. There's a question 2 behind you.
Firstly, thank you so much for the session. I'm Advocate Ananya Tyagi. I'm building my own legal tech startup wherever I'm integrating artificial intelligence in arbitration and mediation. It's called Arbitralis AI. So my question is, what advice would you give to a founder who's building an AI integrated model in arbitration and mediation? What are the few things that a founder should keep in mind while building such a product so that there is acceptance by the community and not ignorance by the community?
That's a great question, and I'm not on commission, so I can give you the answer. I think it's many of the points I made in the slide, and I saw you nodding. There are huge risks of AI. Judges, I always in mediation, I would describe judges like water. They take the path of least resistance. And that's how many of them get something. They don't want to be appealed. If they don't care about being appealed, they don't want to be seen to be unfair. And so they come a certain way. AI doesn't have that emotion. But that doesn't mean it won't just find a simple answer. And I think that's your challenge in there. Because you talked to me for a few minutes. I'm not sure what exactly you're designing, but are we designing that everything that's designed now has to be to save something, to save time, to save money? And so will it be, if you're going to arbitration, to avoid having lawyers stand up, having arbitrators? What would it be? So I think at present, and I don't think that is your aim, because this doesn't pay you. You want to have the arbitrators and the lawyers, if it's arbitration, using it.
Yes. Yes.
So you've got to find a thing that makes them better at their job.
Absolutely. The role is always to be efficient rather than taking away the jobs, but it is to provide a more efficient solution for the arbitrators and mediators.
Yeah. It's got to be better at the job, and I think that's the key to this. Otherwise, it's going to take over. It has the potential to take over the job, or and this is the downside for you potentially not being used. If it doesn't do something that makes the arbitration environment different to what it is, then it's not going to serve the purpose. If you talk about arbitration, what's the biggest complaint? Arbitration was introduced to the world as this cost-efficient method of dispute resolution, and it's failed. It's now, in many cases, more expensive than court, and that's worldwide, certainly in the UK. So what you're designing has to do something to make it more efficient. There's one more issue, and I think I said this when we were talking last night, and I said it outside as well. How many people in here are lawyers? This is an echo chamber. We're talking to ourselves, and that's not your audience. The people who want to use arbitration and mediation are the users, are the contractors, are the developers, are the insurers, are the banks. And this is the same mistake, I think, worldwide, is we talk in this as mediators in this echo chamber to ourselves, not to the people that we're meant to be serving. You know, if you have a restaurant, you don't just talk to the cooks in the kitchen about the food. You ask the people outside, how did the food taste? And what dishes do you want on the menu? We don't do that. If we do it, we don't do it well. And that's a challenge for you to get beyond this echo chamber. Wonderful echo, yeah. An amazing echo chamber.
Thank you.
So,
And we can safely take AI as a horizontal change, which is cutting across geographies and jurisdictions. You said mediation has been there in US for about 40 years, 50 years time, in UK 30 years plus or something, and India is also catching up, right? I mean, with its own baby steps of whichever way. Can we assume safely, can AI be that leveler where one doesn't have to go through the learning curve and probably, the time will be squeezed and will be up there? Everyone trying to behave, perform similarly, or the intuition, the experience, everything will probably still make a difference. So something to ponder about, I don't know. Has it been clear? I mean,
these are fantastic questions, and I know I have to be careful which is nodding, which is yes, no, but I see people nodding, I saying yes, and I see people nodding saying no. I don't think it's going to be a leveler. I think it's I use the word about trust, but what's the real word? Power. This is such a powerful tool, and it's in its infancy. I think that's the thing to really grasp what it is and potentially where it's going. And I think I don't think this is going to be an equal distribution of this power. Again, read something and it really paused me for thought, which is you can use ChatGPT, Copilot, all those for free. You can pay a bit more, but it's still not very high. I've got the top of the range. I think it's costing me £25 a month. That's not much. Billions and billions and billions of dollars have been invested in this. And at some point, there has to be a return on that investment. That's power. So where does that do? This is beyond my pay grade. Way beyond my pay grade as to this. But this is not a leveler. This is not everyone's on the same playing field. I think it actually has a risk of being opposite. But I've only owned one hat, and it's a very cynical one. So that's it.
Sorry, I want to ask one question now, Mr. Handu. In AI, it's a machine and tool where we can use it for the commercial dispute. How it could be helpful for the family dispute mediation? Like it means feelings where among the family dispute between the petitioner and wife and husband. How it could be helpful for?
I'm very pleased to say I've seen one family mediation, and it was my own. I never want to see another one. I think I have no idea is the answer, but I think that any divorce, the level of emotion in it is something the machine can't understand. So I think we're leaving all that aside. I have the same. I get a lot of family disputes, and they're the ones I would describe as the family business disputes as the most illogical. They're coming from pure dislike of one brother of the other, whoever it is, brother-in-law, whatever it is. It's not rational, the dispute. Where can AI help is probably once you get to the financial part, and perhaps being able to set out why what is being said by one side doesn't make logical sense. Because what's the phrase we hear now? It's not. I'm not just talking about mediation. Not always. It's not. What does the instinct tell us? What does foresight tell us? The phrase you hear all the time is, "What does the data show?" And I think that's the key. People buy into that. The data may show nonsense, but people now refer to data. They use phrases like research has shown. And very people say, well, what research? They just make these bold statements, the data shows. So I think using data, once you get to the financial side of a family, certainly a divorce, might be something that be used. But there's a very good reason why I do not do family mediations, because I think they're incredibly difficult. And I take my hat off, even though it's a cynical one, to anyone who does them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for the thought-provoking lecture.
The microphone, they can't hear you online.
You can't hear me?
No, online they can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you so much, Andrew, for the thought-provoking talk. Just a quick short question, more practical. Which is the best AI tool that you have seen till now for mediation?
I'm not gonna, as this has been recorded. Most of them link back to ChatGPT anyway. Yeah. Whichever one you're using, they haven't created all these different tools, so it doesn't make that much difference. But if you're using it, you've got to make sure it's the closed system. That's the only way we can be secure. If you use the WhatsApp one, will give you probably say the WhatsApp one probably won't produce the slides. So, and you've got to be cynical, because I've just remembered something. A fellow arbitrator is a keen horse rider, and uses it for different things, and decided I want to analyze the way I'm riding the horse. So had someone take a video of it and put the video on, like you can upload a PDF, and it came up with the most detailed analysis of her riding. She was absolutely blown away by how good this was. What she then decided to do is there was a video taken a year before, and she put that in and said, can you compare? And it did a very similar thing. It didn't make sense. So she then asked a question saying, I don't understand why you said this. And it came back and said, I have to admit, I can't actually see videos. It had given the most fantastic analysis without seeing it. And that's the danger you're facing. So I don't think it really matters which one, because they will seem to source back to this. You've seen just in 2 seconds what it can do. one of the things I've heard is we've been on ChatGPT 5.2 for quite a while. They're holding it back for a reason. They've already got 5.3, 5.4, 5.5. It's getting too good. And that's one of the reasons that they're holding it back. So use them. Just don't the WhatsApp one you can have fun with. Just do that casually.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up the Q&A session now, or possibly with time.
Two more.
Namaskar, sir. First of all, a warm welcome to the India. My question is that if AI system are trained on historical biased legal data, are we at the risk of scaling injustice rather than solving it?
Yes.
Because when we talked about the publications and research and universities, they have something to cross check. They have something to respond. But AI is using everyone's data. Then there is catch.
So the first question, yes, absolutely, we're at risk. We're at huge risk. The second question, it's becoming more difficult now. The universities had a system of looking at plagiarization. They would just check what's on the net, see what they could find. One thing I did when I was asking questions was I'd ask it the same question the next day, and it would come up with a slightly different answer. Why? You know, has it learned something in the interim? But I think what you're saying, I think universities are probably there was something on the radio just last week about how universities are now having to accept that 90% of students are using ChatGPT or equivalent. They're just having to accept it as told they can use ChatGPT. Well, it's free game to anyone. But going back to your first question, absolutely. Yeah. Take one last question and move on.
Yeah, hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Anku Khanna. So my question is just, about these laws, like we are having privacy laws in each of the jurisdictions. Like India has its own data protection laws, Europe has GDPR. So do you think that it is kind of restricting the evolution of AI in some way or the other, where data will not be transmitted amongst the countries and that will impact AI growth?
I think it's another one above my pay grade. A great question. I've no idea, but I don't think it is. I don't think that those who are creating the AIs of the future are that worried about necessarily complying with GDPR or that. They're just going ahead. There has to be a reason. There's too much money being spent on this. So I don't think they're going to get in the way. I think the challenge is what happens to those laws, whether those laws are going to be relevant in the future or how they're going to deal with it. I am really conscious and not able to use it as I want to use it because I'm worried about confidentiality. Because of the bar, I'm still registered, the barrister tells me about my confidentiality obligations, and I got GDPR obligations. The question in my head: how long will I have those restrictions before, not necessarily me, but 10 years time, lawyers are able to use it just however they want, and privacy laws go out of the country. And of course, privacy laws are different in different jurisdictions, and this is global. So the privacy laws you have here and we have in the UK are different from privacy laws in the States. where freedom of information, freedom of speech comes first. So it's going to be challenged in every jurisdiction, I think.
Area of litigation. Maybe.
Everywhere. Everywhere. And I'm just going to tell you, because I asked WhatsApp to tell me a joke, but I didn't use it, but instead, why did the mediator need to go to see a psychologist or psychiatrist? And said because the parties felt unsettled.
Thank you, sir. Moving forward, I now. Thank you, sir. I now invite Ms. Mandakini Sharma, seasoned mediator and advocate, Supreme Court of India, to deliver the concluding remarks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Keshav. As we come to the close of this insightful session on the topic from intuition to intelligence, AI's emerging role in mediation practice, it is evident that we are in the cusp of a transformative moment in dispute resolution through mediation. Mediation has traditionally been guided by human intuition, by the mediator's ability to listen deeply, read emotions, understand unspoken concerns, and build bridges of trust between parties. These human qualities have always formed the heart of a successful mediation. Mediation is ultimately a human process rooted in empathy, judgment, and subtle understanding of human relationships. Technology may support this process, but it cannot replicate the trust that a skilled mediator built in a room, nor the nuanced sensitivity required to guide parties through conflict. The challenge before us, therefore, is not whether artificial intelligence will influence mediation, but how we choose to integrate it responsibly while preserving the deeply human character of the practice. However, as Mr. Andrew Miller KC has thoughtfully illustrated today, the emerge of artificial intelligence is gradually expanding the tools available to mediators. His spellbinding narration on how AI potentially assists in analyzing complex data and the competing risk of the parties to the mediation rather than acting as a disruptor has assured many here of the continued growth of mediation as a go-to AR process in the near future. He has very succinctly explained how AI would assist in identifying patterns across disputes and even help parties better understand possible outcomes, to how it has opened new windows for us mediators. We have learned today how, rather than replacing the human mediator, these technologies appear to be strengthening the mediator's capacity. The parties, as also the mediator's analysis of risk to facilitate informed dialogue and more efficient resolution will go a long way in laying a SOP for a transparent and informed resolution and mitigation of rival claim. Mr. Miller has highlighted the future does not belong to institution alone, but nor does it belong to the machines. It belongs to those who can hold and use both at once. Well, today's discussion reminds us that future of mediation will likely to be shaped by a thoughtful partnership between human wisdom and technological intelligence. If approached carefully, AI can serve as a valuable aid, helping mediators prepare more effectively, analyze disputes more clearly, and support parties in making well-informed decisions. At the same time, the mediator's role as a facilitator of trust, empathy, and dialogue will remain irreplaceable. In that sense, the journey from intuition to intelligence is not a shift away from the human dimension of mediation, but rather an expansion of the mediator's toolkit. It invites us to embrace innovation while remaining grounded in the core values that define mediation: fairness, confidentiality, neutrality, and respect for the autonomy of the parties. Now, Mr. Miller's
reflection today have offered us not only a glimpse into emerging possibilities, but also a thoughtful reminder that technology must ultimately serve the purpose of justice and constructive dialogue. As professionals engaged in dispute resolution, it is our responsibility to ensure that as these tools evolve, they are guided by ethical considerations, transparency, and a commitment to maintain the integrity of the mediation process. With that perspective in mind, we conclude today's enriching discussion with a deeper appreciation of both the opportunities and the responsibilities that lie ahead. The intersection of AI and mediation practice is still unfolding, but conversations such as today's help us engage with these changes thoughtfully and constructively. On that note, I once again express my gratitude to Mr. Andrew Miller KC for sharing his valuable insights and for stimulating such an important conversation for the mediation community. My heartfelt thanks to all the participants, your enthusiastic presence here, as well as all present online, truly enriched the discussion today. I deeply appreciate the time and effort of our technical team of Keshav and Uday, whose constant support and cooperation have been invaluable. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to dear colleagues and friends for their encouragement. And finally, I warmly thank Team Nivaaran for the unwavering support which played such a significant role in bringing this event together seamlessly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom. It is my privilege to invite you all to our upcoming events. That is on 14th of April 2026, the 5th Story Swarabji Memorial Lecture by Justice P.S. Narasimha. On the topic, it is very interesting, human rights in the empire of artificial intelligence. And another event, the Commonwealth Mediation Conference from 31st of July 2026 to 2nd of August 2026 in Jaipur. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Nandini, Secretary Nivaaran, to felicitate our guest speaker. Please.
चल रहा है
And as a token of appreciation, the Nivaaran team extends the lifetime membership with Nivaaran to Mr. Andrew Miller, please. On today's occasion, we will also announce a very esteemed mediator who has been in this journey throughout, Mr. Manmohan Sharma, as a lifetime member of Nivaaran. Thank you, sir, for always being here. Now we conclude the program. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I don't have to pay